I don't know where these recordings go. Hopefully they go someplace that somebody can use them. If not, then you guys will just have to keep it retained in your memory. Okay, cool. All right. Let's begin. I'm going to send you, by the way, I'm going to email an outline over to you, Chandler, at the end of this so you guys can see. You guys all have a copy of this outline right here. I'm going to try to go through it as much as we can. Okay, let's start from the very beginning. Why do we study history? Why is it important?
Because history repeats itself, and learn from other people's mistakes.
Absolutely. History does repeat itself. Not only do we want to learn from the mistakes, we also want to learn from their successes, right? We want to learn from both of those. Anything to add to that, Hal? Okay, all right. That's the idea, right? But history also informs our understanding of why we're here. That's really important as well, right? What did our predecessors, what did our ancestors do? What did our fathers and our forefathers and those who came before us? What did they do? Why did they do what they do? And what does it mean for us? Some of the things you get, here's an important factor. You guys are all coming to be men. You're all just about to be launched out of your families into the world. If you're not launched with a purpose and a passion, you will search for it. Probably find a bad one. So some of this is to give you a purpose and a passion to know what you're here for, what you're fighting for. You guys have heard me tell you this. You guys have a fight ahead. You were born into a world at war, spiritual warfare. In some cases, actually all of you, actually physical warfare as well. We were probably, the global war of terror was already underway when you guys were born, right? What year were you born?
2007.
7? 2007. What year were you born? 2007. Okay, you were born. I know, because in 2007 I was in Fallujah, Iraq, right? I was roughing it up with some insurgents out there. You were born in a world at war. You will die in a world at war. History is going to continue well forward. I know I have some well-meaning friends who really think that the world's going to end next week, tomorrow, whatever. I've heard that my entire life. That's been being said for hundreds of years. It's not. So hang on to your hat. You got a lot of work to do. You're not going to get escape anytime soon. I think we got at least 1,000 years to our front, but that's another story, another lesson for another day. What I want to tell you is you need to be prepared for the future. We've talked about this a lot. You're going to fight a war. You're either going to win it in a war of words, right? Presenting the gospel, or you're going to fight the war of rifles. You're going to see a repeating theme in history, particularly when we're talking about, because our focus of history is military history. The side that almost always wins is the side that has the best leadership. I want you to notice that theme over and over and over again. Best leaders win the battles. Because that God has the ability to, and frequently does, affect how the leaders act. You're going to see this. This is going to be pretty neat. You're going to get to see it through human eyes. And I'm also just going to pull back a little bit and go, what is God doing in these situations? Where is the Lord? Is there a right and wrong? There is always a right and wrong. But with men, it's never as cut and dry as these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It's never that easy. Never, even when there's wrong, it's never quite that simple. The guys that are wrong are doing something, are wrong, probably doing the wrong things for the right reasons, right? That's usually the case. Even look at a guy as what's the most villainous character in all of history?
Probably Hitler.
Adolf Hitler, right? He's easy to pick at. As wrong as he was, and evil as wicked he was, he thought he was doing the right thing. What did he think he was doing? He was thinking he was saving humanity, right? You guys seen the Avengers, right? Thanos. This drives Grace nuts, by the way. Like, Dad, who's your favorite villainous character? And I'm beginning to explain why Thanos is my favorite character. It's like, why? Because he's got purpose and he truly believes in what he's doing is for the good of all humanity and all living kind. He's like, oh, I don't care. Who do you think has the need his power? Like, no. That's not what it's about. It's about understanding the characters. Why, Adolf Hitler murdered 6 million Jews wickedly destroyed him because he thought he was purifying the human race. Totally wrong. Absolutely wicked. Terrible man. But believed he was doing something right. Why did the German people follow?
They believe he
He's
a great orator.
They, both of those things. They believed he was right. First of all, most of them had no idea what was going on. That's part of it.
I was gonna say he didn't like go out and say, "Hey, let's go kill all the Jews." He asked them to join for a purpose and found people that like pretty sure were
You're right. Go,
And
keep
I
going.
think-
Go. Yeah.
didn't really know what they were doing. Oh, he was a really good leader. People trust like people trusted him and felt like he had purpose.
I think it's
He knew what he was doing.
I think it's Goebbels, that's his name. The guy
Goebbels.
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 Yeah, he was a really smart guy. Like he was great with propaganda up until the end. So with that, like his oration, everything, like that was the best way to keep almost a Nazi type state keep going is to have really great PR. That's the only way to do it, really.
I mean, at the front end, before Hitler started massacring people, before that was even, brought out that Mein Kampf that was his goal. He wasn't even thinking really that was his goal. That was not his initial intent. He didn't initially intend to massacre the Jews. He was actually did a great thing to begin with. There was economic persecution. They were having to wrongly pay a bunch of reparations to France that was crushing their economy. And he rose up and he stopped that. The first things he did were great. He started out as a really good leader, and people followed him, said, yes, you're making Germany great again. He really was. He was fabulous for that. That was not meant to be an illusion at all. That was entirely came out. So he actually started out really good. And then the more he went, then he needed a scapegoat. The Jews had all the money, nobody else did. So they took the money from the rich, gave it to the poor. And they're like, well, somebody's got to die. These guys die. And off it went, right? So the people that followed him followed initially in good faith. Later on, those same leaders that were following him, Erwin Rommel, Hans Guderian, others, attempted to kill Hitler because they realized he'd gone off the rails. So every time you study one of these wars and we say, these guys are the good guys, these are the bad guys, take a step back and go, really? Who writes the history?
Winners.
The winners. The winners write the history, almost always. There's rare instances where we can collect both sides of the history. One of my favorite ones, of course, you're going to get to hear me talk about it a lot, is the war between the states. What makes that fascinating for us is we have the complete diaries, all the dialogues, all the combat reports of both sides of the conflict. We can see it from both sides, which is rare. We usually don't have that, right? The side that loses, their stuff gets destroyed, their diaries get burned through a lot of history. And so a lot of history is lost, and you're not really sure why were these guys fighting. That's important stuff when we get into this. So, and even if I present something, fact check me. I will make mistakes. I will. My general thrust is usually right, but every now and then I get something out of position or out of date. I'm not going to be offended if you say, hey, I checked it. You want to do it respectfully. Hey, sir, you had mentioned this last week. You said this battle occurred. It was actually this guy and that guy. Oh, great. Perfect. That's fantastic. Or I'll even present things. We're going to get into a lot of opinions, a lot of debate. Talk about a lot of morality stuff, a lot of legality, I think. But let's go through some basics because I am now at time. Okay. 1800. So I've got 2 hours left. We'll do. You guys want to take a short break? Are you good? Okay. Rules of conduct here. Okay. If you start dozing off, somebody raise a hand. Okay. Either stand up if I'm losing you guys, somebody stop me, and we'll stop and take breaks because I can maybe go longer than you. No big deal. We'll stop and take a break. Okay. This is all about if it starts losing its pizzazz, let me know. We'll reinstate it. But let's go through some stuff that you guys have heard before. This is why we study. We study to understand our country, our biblical foundations, understand, assess, and confirm the legitimacy of our foundations. What's one of the questions that we want to ask right out the gate? Are we a legitimate nation? If somebody came to you and said, hey, in fact, you hear this, how often do we hear this challenge? What do you hear? How do we hear the legitimacy of America challenged? What does it sound like?
Stole the land from the Indians.
Stole the land from the Indians. What else? That's a big one.
Built on slaves.
Built on slaves. There's another one.
You never should have gone away from Britain.
Never should have left England. What else? These are great questions. They need to be answered. You need to be able to answer those questions. Did we steal the lands from the Indians? Were we rightfully to rebel against England? Right? Is the white man evil? Right? You'll hear about this. Slavery. What about all the stuff that was built on slavery? All of those questions, and we're going to answer all of them in the course of this. But answer those questions. You have to be able to answer those because there's a legitimate point here. If we are illegitimately founded, then we are an illegitimate nation. And then those that seek to destroy America are right. She should be destroyed. But if that's not the case, spoiler alert, it's not the case. Don't tell anybody. It's not the case. And we're a legitimate nation. By the way, no nation is perfect on the earth. But America is probably the best one. You look at everybody's history, they all got skeletons in the closet. No mistake, we got skeletons in our closet. Some big ones. We have fewer skeletons in our closet than any other nation on the planet. That's what you're going to find. That's the takeaway. That is the major takeaway, right? Nations are flawed. And look at Israel. How many mistakes does Israel make? Yeah, they serve their God, then they go serve the Baals. Every time I read it, I'm going through Joshua. Like, dude, God just showed up in a giant pillar of fire, and you're over here 20 days later building a golden calf. Like, in fact, he's still there. He's on the mountain. You're looking at him and you're building and going, well, what's going on here? I mean, there's make no mistake as well. There is not 1 ounce of difference as far as sin goes between us and Adolf Hitler. Anyone in this room, under the right conditions, exposed to the right things, could have been him in history. If you look at a character in history and you dismiss him and you say, that guy's a whack job, I'd never have done that. Yes, you would have, except for the saving grace of God's hand. You would have done the same. Let that go through, right? Yes, we're going to condemn some characters in history. Who's truly, we all pick on Adolf Hitler as being the most villainous in history, but he's not. There's 2 guys that are more notorious than he that get overlooked.
Mao Zedong.
Mao Zedong is the worst. How many did Hitler kill?
6 million.
6 million of his own people. How many did Mao Zedong kill?
Well, 30.
50. 50 million. Yeah, 50 million. Killed 50 million. And the other one that's in between the two of them?
Genghis Khan.
What's that?
Was it Genghis Khan or Stalin?
Joseph Stalin. Genghis Khan killed quite a few too. I mean, every leader in history, as you go through, with very, very, very few exceptions, just wipes out entire civilizations. That's the bulk of history. In fact, if we started from the dawn of time and you go look through warfare, homework assignment number 1. I want you to look at how warfare is conducted in the early days of history. Right? Early warfare. This is going to be biblical warfare. You're going to go in there and just look at the early nations. In fact, if you want to just begin with the Exodus, take the Exodus, take Joshua going in to these other nations. Not only look at how the Israelites fight, but how do the other nations around them do warfare in ancient times. Doesn't have to be a long outline. It can be a very short one. 5 or 6 passages. So you'll go home, you'll write down, hey, you'll do it again, very brief outline. It should be half a page or 1 page. Ancient warfare, how was it conducted? Ancient warfare. Pagans and the Israelites. Compare and contrast. What was done? What were the rules of warfare that God gave to the Israelites? What were the rules of warfare by which the pagans conducted warfare? Anybody want to venture just a quick right out the gate? How was ancient warfare done?
Plus, no rules at all. Village, or unless they engineer you, then still do that.
At the end of the war, what happens? At the end of the battle, the war, who's killed?
Weird.
Children. Men and boys. And what they are.
That's right. And what happens to women? We're just gonna call it right what it is. What's the first thing that happens to all of the women?
Yeah.
They're raped. Why are they raped immediately? Dominance. And of course, men are pagans, and that's what they do. And then they're turned into either sexual slaves, or some of them are taken as wives. But that's what happens. All of the pagan nations on the earth, that's how they did warfare. Get that picture in your mind for just a second, so we understand how brutal ancient warfare was. We are so blessed, as much as blessings can be in warfare, having seen Christian warfare over the last 300 years, actually more than that, probably the last 800 years of history, a Christianized version of warfare where chivalry is a thing. That was never the case in the ancient world. So begin with that skeleton in the closet of most of the nations on the planet. That's how warfare was done, all of them, all the way up to Muhammad sacking Antioch. After Muhammad and the rise of Islam, you then have the Holy Roman Empire, which begins to change the rules of warfare for the first time in history. And then as Europe grows, European warfare up through, the 1600s and on, and then you get into Napoleonic warfare is degrees of civilized. There's degrees of civilized, right? They go out, there's flags raised, there's conversations had between lords and knights, and when we had, can we negotiate a surrender? No, then they fight for a while, and then the fighting stops. Even the Spartans had points where they would just stop. In the ancient warfare, the Spartans and the Athenians would have points where they'd stop when they're trying to not kill everybody. Right? Even the Romans did that as well. They're not trying to massacre their enemy. They're trying to bring them in as an ally. They're going to kill enough of them, force them to join the Republic. And that's how they grew the empire. Genghis Khan did it. Some nations did it to one extent or another. But early ancient warfare, that's how it's done. So look at that stuff. Somebody can even do someone pulling out for Walker. I want you can divest from that task. And Walker, I want you to do Greek warfare. So you don't have to do this one. I don't want you to cover pagans and Israelites. I want you to talk about how was Greek warfare done, ancient Greek warfare. I reference you to the landmark Thucydides and the landmark Herodotus as references, and you can just do it online. Okay, how was that warfare conducted? And you're going to find extremes. Okay? And then par. You're gonna divest from this ancient warfare task. I want you to cover, he's covering Greeks. I want you to cover Roman warfare. Very good. And then one more. George, I'm going to give you George, you on? You hear me? Give me now. I'll have to let him know afterwards. I'll give him this assignment afterwards. What was I going to have him do? Greek warfare, Roman warfare. And I want him to cover the crossing of the Rubicon. Okay, let's blow through some history here real quick, just to bring this is all for you, Chandler. Hold on to your hat. Here we go. First of all, key terms. The two things we're going to talk about are morality and legality. And you guys have heard this probably 20 or 30 times at least, maybe 100 times, and I wouldn't be exaggerating. What is morality?
Like God's law.
In essence, in one word, it's God's law. All of you put this on your homework. Look up morality and legality. In what book are you going to look it up in?
1828 Webster's Dictionary.
1828 Webster's. You don't have one. I know the Sturgeons have one. Want to find the original English definition of that. But in very short, morality is God's law. Legality is what? A contrast. Man's law. Legality, for something to be legal, requires three things. it is lawful, meaning been set into motion by some legitimate government. It's limited, or the limits of the law, and it is written down. Lawful, limited, written down. Legality. As opposed to what is power?
Forcing your will on someone.
Yeah, how did Mao Zedong say it? Power flows from the barrel of a gun. Bayonet. Okay, those are some important notes to hang on to. Next thing, what is democracy? Choose by vote, by voting. Equal voting generally, should be equal voting of all parties, all individual peoples. What is a republic?
Like,
It's a representative government. Don't combine them yet. It's really key. Representative government. What are some early forms of representative governments? Well, okay, let me hang on. I asked the question too soon. The feudal lords in England were representative governments. How did you get to be a feudal lord in England? The knights.
Either hereditary, or you could also technically buy it.
Yeah. And you would therefore rule a land, and all the people that lived on your land, you were the republic head, the head of the republic, whether they wanted you or not. That's a republic. Representation. You guys good? Are you
Sir.
working out your chair, Foster?
Yeah.
Or is he, he's causing your chair to fall? Do I need to separate you guys? I can put you over here. I got plenty of room. We're coming around here. Come on up, Dean. Come on over here. Give you more room. Well, he can keep going on. All right, then by definition, this is very important for you, Chandler, because I know I'm hitting it really fast. What is a democratic republic then? The democratic republic. The combination of democracy and republic. What does it look like?
Equal votes for different.
Very good. Dean, your homework, one of your homework, try to keep a list here, is I want you to look up the reference for the Democratic Republic in biblical Democratic Republic. It's first done under Moses. And be prepared to talk about it briefly at the next meeting, okay? Everybody got one assignment yet? Probably not. George has one, Brandon's waiting for one. Walker's got, let's see, Walker, Parr, George. Gonna get one for Thomas yet? Gotta get one for Brandon, might get one. Then I gotta get one for Chandler. Once I get a Roger up, that Chandler's alive and on one. Chandler, you still there, brother? Chandler, can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear me? You got a thumbs up, right? He's still with us. Good. Okay. All right. I'm erasing things as we go, so hopefully you guys are capturing these things and take away this. Hear what you guys have. Take away that. Take away this. We're into some stuff. Let's keep going. Okay. Democratic republics. What's the first democratic republic? It's on your outline.
Israel.
Israel. And that's the one that Dean's going to go over. He's going to read the Levitical common law in Exodus 18:21 and give us a little bit of exposition on how that one comes about. But the bottom line is that they are electing their heads of families, heads of tribes, and on they go. The second major democratic republic occurs in Rome for a short period of time. What happened in Rome, in the city itself, prior to the rise of Caesar? How did it work?
They had a senate, which was
How long did it last?
around
150 years. And Thomas, you're going to check the dates on the Roman Republic in your homework list. Okay? Give us a little bit more information about that. Okay? Roman Republic. What killed the brief history of the Greek states. I think I already put that on there. Greek warfare for Walker. You can see, we talked about this a little bit last time. Hold on a second. Well, it's Tom. Let me tell him I'm teaching class, but let's see if. Hey, Tom, I'm teaching class, but did you need me? All right, I'll call you at the end of class around 8 o'clock. Thanks. Okay, perfect. All right, okay, so let's talk briefly the history of Greece. Okay, and this is important. Again, you can have a whole separate course on Greek history. What are some of the Greek states that we're aware of? They're famous Greek states.
Athens.
Athens.
Or
What did Athens bring? What was Athens most notable for? There's two things.
philosophy
Philosophy is good.
and navy.
Their navy, did a huge navy. What kind of form of government did they have that was most interesting?
Democracy.
What kind of a democracy?
Like full.
A pure, full-blown democracy. If you read about it, Athanasius, I think it is, could be totally wrong on that one. They had I'll have to go look it up in one of my books. They had a Colosseum, a giant Colosseum. And if they're going to vote on a major issue, all of Athens would turn out in this Colosseum. And every person that shows up gets a black marble and a white marble. Yes and no. Right? And then there's speakers out there and they speak on this point or whatever, right? And then somebody says, cast your votes. And usually they just throw them into the middle of the ring. Or sometimes they'll throw them into buckets and collect them up, but then they just look around and go, pile of black rocks is this high, pile of white rocks is this high, doesn't care. What does that give rise to? Was that
The orator.
the orator? He who could speak the best in that moment and inflame the passions of the individual will gain that. Does that sound familiar? Come on, guys. With America, well, yeah, how's this done, right? Social media, the news. I mean, how do we decide whether or not really we like a lot of our people? For most Americans, whether they're going to vote for this candidate or this candidate, how do they do it?
I like the way you talk.
I like the cut of that boy Jim. Like the way he talks. Or vote for that guy, right? Or maybe they're even worse than that. Maybe they're like, no, I want to vote for a woman because that's or whatever, right? But a lot of it is I heard this guy talk, and that's what I'm gonna. Nowadays, it's getting more polarized than that. So nobody cares about the candidates anymore. They're just I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, but prior to that recent outbreak of things, that's how it's often done. That comes back to that model. So we got that coming back around. It caused some great disasters. They were making major decisions about warfare in this Colosseum. The war between Athens and Sparta, this is where the Spartans had a great advantage. What was the Spartan government?
2 kings.
2 kings. 2 guys. He's got a whole Colosseum. You want to make a decision, you got to get everybody in the Colosseum. Right, get in here, guys. We got to make some decisions. How are we gonna do this? It doesn't work real well, right? So, but that's one of the things that's really interesting in history about the first Democrat briefly Athens. What other Greek states are we aware of? Crete. What sort of stuff happened in Crete?
Wasn't it more like
Where is Crete?
Yeah.
What kind of nation is it? Where's Crete is? Crete is a giant
island?
So they're an island, landlocked. They're an island. So they're an island state. So their politics are a little bit different because they're on an island. So they're a little bit disconnected. What about Sparta? You need to know about Sparta. Foster, sir. Why don't you give me just a brief? You tell me a little bit briefly about Sparta. A little, 2-minute. Hey, this is Sparta. 2 kings. What were the things that were important to Sparta? Right? They were a major power at the time. Although a tiny country, they were a major power. All right, it's important to know that. What kind of you see monarchies and you see democracies. What ends the Roman Democratic Republic? What event that we talked about?
The crossing.
That's right. Julius Caesar raised an army, like all of them, all of the early Roman leaders. You spend money, you hire an army, you go conquer some lands, you gain fame, you gain gold, you come back, and everybody loves you. But there was no armies were not allowed to enter into Rome itself. In fact, I'm going to read you. Let me give you a great thing in history. Let me give you let me pull up a video clip out of Killer Angels. And this was actually, I believe this was done by Joshua Chamberlain. Okay. Let's see, this is movie, Gods and Generals. Chamberlain. Caesar quote. Caesar monologue. Saw this recent. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. You understand the, let's see if I can make this work. Let's see. See if I can get my volume to come out of this thing.
Romans. Caesar. Self, no legion was committed. Marcus Canus left us a problem. What happened?
Pause that for just a second. Let me give you the background to this. This is what makes this historically interesting. Julius Caesar knows Rome is Rome is becoming unstable. He decides there's a bit of a civil war going on, kind of. But he decides he's going to, so that's his purpose. That's when he says, hey, I'm not just gonna come and go make myself the king. He believes that Rome is falling apart and therefore he needs to do something about it. No general was allowed to, I'm gonna shut off the heat, the air conditioner. No general was allowed to bring an army into Rome itself. Julius Caesar comes up to the edge of the Rubicon River, which is the limit of where you can bring an army. And he's going to bring that army there. And he decides to cross it. Major event in history. Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon. Who's going to do this one? Chandler? Some of your homework? Julius Caesar crossing. No, I already gave it to George. George had it. Okay, I'm going to keep you guys' assignment straight. So you cross the Rubicon. What makes this interesting is when he crosses the Rubicon, they're taking an oath of death, right? If they cross it, all of them are going to be, if they don't succeed and capture Rome, they're all going to be killed. They just committed treason against the state. Later on, as we talked about, this is why Julius Caesar was killed. In this sequence, Joshua Chamberlain is the colonel of the 20th Maine in the war between the states. In this particular scene, this is the attack at Fredericksburg. This is the stupidest attack the Union ever makes. It's a frontal assault uphill against an extremely fortified position across open ground. When Captain Pendleton, Colonel Pendleton, who was commanding the Confederate artillery, was asked, how good your artillery? He tells General Lee, he says, sir, a chicken could not survive on that battlefield. And he's dead right. At the end of this attack, the Union casualties are enormous. Go ahead and hit the douse this switch up here for just a second so you guys can see that screen and hopefully you can hear it.
You can also turn on closed captions.
Oh, that's fine. You guys can hear it. Here we go.
Caesar knew he had to march on Rome itself, which no legion was permitted to do. Marcus Lucanus left us a product. What happened? How swiftly Caesar had surmounted the icy Alps, and in his mind conceived immense upheavals coming on. When he reached the water of the little Rubicon, clearly to the leader through the murky night appeared a mighty image of his country in distress. Grief in her face, her white hair streaming from her tower-crowned head. With tresses torn and shoulders bare, she stood before him and sighing said, where further do you march? Where do you take my standards, warriors? If lawfully you come, if as citizens, this far only is allowed. Then trembling struck the leader's limbs, his hair grew stiff, and weakness checked his progress, holding his feet at the river's edge. At last he speaks, O Thunderer, surveying great Rome's walls from the Tarpeian rock, O Phrygian house gods of Eulus, clan and mysteries of Corvinus, who was carried off to heaven, O Jupiter of Latium, seated in lofty Alba and hearths of Vesta, O Rome, equal to the highest deity, favor my plans. Not with impious weapons do I pursue you, Here am I, Caesar, conqueror of land and sea, your own soldier everywhere. Now, too, if I am permitted. The man who makes me your enemy, it is he, will be the guilty one. Then he broke the barriers of war and through the swollen river swiftly took his standards. Caesar crossed the flood and reached the opposite bank. From Hesperia's forbidden fields, he took his stand and said, here I abandon peace and desecrated law. Fortune, it is you I follow. Farewell to treaties. From now on, war is our judge. We who are about to die salute you.
All right. That was, let me go and stop this. All right, bring this back up. But no, that is this. What were the key points? What was he saying? What was the gist of what he was saying? Can you hear me again? I don't know why my screen's not in the center here. Have you all heard that quote? Hail Caesar, we who are about to die, salute you. Where have you heard that? You guys have seen that movie recently.
Is it a gladiator?
I think that's it, Glad.
In Gladiator,
Which one?
the first one. I mean, it's the first one, the middle one, right? Hail Caesar, we who are about to die, salute you. That is where that quote comes from. And the fact that Joshua Chamberlain was quoting it before the Battle of Fredericksburg, there's enormous irony. Joshua Chamberlain, when we get into talking about him in history, you're going to love that character. He's an amazing general. He really is. He's actually a school teacher of philosophy. And so he's got these big quotes. I mean, he's a great orator. That's some good stuff. But anyway, all right. I'm going to take a short break, and then so we'll take a 5-minute break. Let me stop the recording for a second. Oop. I think I stopped it. What? Oh, I didn't. Stop recording. There we go. Stop the recording.